So happy to have with me today one of the greatest referees in WWF history, one of the most recognizable as well, creator of the Ref and Rant, the one and only Jimmy Korderas. Jimmy, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. I'm so happy you're here with me today.
No, I'm glad to be here, Phil. I very much appreciate you having me on, and thank you for that lovely introduction. And just to make a correction, I didn't. It wasn't my original idea for the Ref and Rant. I have to give credit to where credit is due. My wife was unfortunately the one here who used to hear me rant about certain things I'd see on TV while watching wrestling, and she goes, "You know what? Why don't you do that on your social media stuff?" And I was like, Yeah. She goes, "You can call it your Ref and Rant, because you're ranting all the time." I go, "Oh, okay." So my wife, Audra, thank you for the suggestion. It's been going for a while now.
It's very well done. I always find myself, sometimes it's the first thing that pops up on social media in the morning, and it's just a nice, short, quick thought, something that, came off of what you watched or something that, a news item or something like that. It's perfect.
Thank you.
One of the things when I was researching you yesterday that I thought was interesting is I realized that you're one of only, on my count, 13. There's something in wrestling history that only 13 people have done, and you are one of them, which is referee the main event of WrestleMania.
Ooh.
I went through the whole list. I actually made a list of everybody. And when you remove like the celebrity, like enforcers and that kind of stuff, but like so actual referees. So what's that like to be in that company? I mean, that's to me. I mean, that's the pinnacle of your profession, I would think.
It absolutely is, and it's indescribable. Let me put it to you this way. To tell the whole story, I wasn't originally scheduled to referee that match at WrestleMania 24 between The Undertaker and Edge. And a little while before the match, I was approached by Edge and says, "Jimmy, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." He says, "Taker and I want you to referee our match at WrestleMania. Are you up for it?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Yes. And at the same time, I'm like, "Oh, I better not." This is a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I'm thinking, this is the main event of WrestleMania, and it's The Undertaker, who at the time was the man. And of course, my good Canadian buddy, as I like to say, the Edgester, and it is indescribable. And the fact that you brought up that only 13 individuals outside of celebrities and special guests and stuff like that have refereed the main event at WrestleMania, it makes it feel even more special today, if that is even possible. Because as you can see behind me, the picture from WrestleMania on the cover of my book in the frame there, and it just meant that it was like when people say when you retire you want to go out the right way. After that match, I could have like called it a career and said, "You know what, nothing's going to top this," if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, certainly. And that was you were in the WWF, WWE for 20 plus years, I believe. So I mean, at that point, you're even late in your refereeing career when that's happening too. You've already seen pretty much everything, through the Hogan era, through the Attitude era, and beyond. So that has to make it even sweeter that you kind of build to that point. I mean, you would referee to so many other WrestleManias and pay-per-views and big events before, but yeah, it's just cool. Did I just lose my audio there? Whoops. It was just cool to go through that and see like obviously Earl Hebner's done it like 11 times. I think Mike Chioda's done it like 10 times, but only the best guys are going to make it to that point. So
no, thank you.
Congratulations on that. So anybody who's online and follows wrestling has probably found you, even if they didn't follow your 20 plus years in the WWE, which begs the question, how do you still maintain such a high interest level in pro wrestling even now? You seem like you're as knowledgeable about the modern product as anybody out there.
No, I appreciate that. It's that I love this business. I still do. I'm happy to be home with my wife and family and getting off the road, for so to speak. But I'm also upset about being off the road, because once you're involved as heavily as we were, and you had your road family out there. I know it's a cliche to say your road family, but it truly was. And when you say, putting your heart and soul into this business, I loved it for, I don't know how many years before I even began. It was a dream to be a part of this business. But at the same time, like I said, becoming a part of it, it becomes a part of you. And to this day, even though I'm not, formally involved with any company, and I just talk about it mostly and analyze and that sort of stuff. I still love it to this day. And there's just like back in the day, there are things I like about it, things I think could be better. And like I talked about earlier in my ref and rants, I don't do it to tear down the business.
Yeah.
I do it because I want to see it improve. I want to see it flourish. I want to see it keep going, and not just WWE or AEW, Impact, MLW, NWA. I want the entire business to succeed because I love it.
And it's always, and I try to keep that same kind of positive outlook in everything that I do too. And it's just good if people are thinking about making the positive change, even if they don't like what you're saying, like in the moment. Just if it makes them think for a second, be like, you know what, maybe if I did this instead of doing this, it would be better. But it's never, it's like you said, it's never a tear down. I think people probably take it that way sometimes, and I'm sure people in your comments probably do too. But no, I appreciate that. What do you like about the current product right now? Like, what's kind of caught your attention in either WWE, AEW, or anywhere else really that you're watching?
No, that still stories matter. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions now is that it's about moments and getting involved in storylines and characters and people that draw the audience in. I mean, the old school adage is, talk people into the seats or talk people in front of their television screens or whatever the case may be. And I'm seeing that sort of coming back at times, and then at other times, look, I'm not a big proponent of matches that are quote unquote spot fests, but I understand their place.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's not the, how can I explain it? Use the right terminology without, as long as like it's not a show about spots, it's a show about characters, it's a show about telling stories. You look at the Roman Reigns and the Bloodline stuff going on right now. That is incredible television. And they are getting enormous reactions and drawing crowds in without having to do a twisting, burning 450 hammer Phoenix splash.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yes, moves like that do have a place in this business, but at the right times, instead of just doing it just to do it.
Yeah.
Make it mean something. And I like the fact that they're getting kind of back to that in some regard, even in AEW, who tends to kind of stray away from a little bit story and more about doing moves.
Mm-hmm.
They do still have some stories that are interesting. I just wish that they would kind of take their time to tell them. That's all.
I can appreciate that, and it's always about going. You're working for whatever your audience is. So,
if I can really quickly, and it's the blending of old school and new school, which is the tough thing to do. It's like I like to say, the wheel when it was invented was made of stone. And then they made it out of wood because it was lighter and easier. But then it was rubber. Then it was vulcanized rubber and run flat tires and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, with all the innovations of the tire is still round because it doesn't work any other way.
Right. And
that's what I like. What they're trying to do in today's world is blend old school and new school because it still can work. Because when we talk about some of the greatest pops in wrestling history, two guys staring at each other in the ring in the middle of the Sky Dome at WrestleMania 18, just standing there looking at each other, and they're blowing the roof off the place. See, that's what it's about. It's not about the ooh, and you get you get the pop, yes, but it's not the memory that you like that 3 years down the road you go, do you remember when?
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about I've loved almost every step of the Bloodline angle, and it's been going on for so long now too, which is also impressive. But for me, it's also that we've got Roman Reigns as a long-term, generational champion, and I think the Usos have really raised the tag team titles basically to the level of main eventing a pay-per-view at this point if they needed to. So while it's great storytelling, it's also that classic, we're going to keep these championships protected and build up as many different contenders to them as we can too. So that's what I really love about that. I was looking up, you had mentioned in another interview kind of about your childhood growing up watching wrestling, and I was amazed at how many different promotions you had available to you. I'm 43, so I had quite a few in the mid 80s available to me via cable, but like you were getting Montreal wrestling up there and
No, we were getting it was amazing. Weekends up here were great. Maple Leaf Wrestling, which was the hometown kind of thing, the Tunneys, Frank Tunney and his nephew Jack Tunney and his son Ed Tunney used to run the promotion up here, Maple Leaf Wrestling, and they would get talent from everywhere. They would get talent from Vince Sr. They would get talent from AWA. They would get, and then they kind of became strongly affiliated with Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling, we used to get on the Buffalo affiliate channels on television up here.
Oh, wow.
And so we'd get Maple Leaf Wrestling, we'd get Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, we'd get International Wrestling from Montreal. After the hockey games on Saturday night, after hockey night in Canada, we would get All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver. We'd get AWA Wrestling on Global Television Network, and there was just so much wrestling to take in. And it was fun because my dad liked it too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we would watch some of it together, but obviously my dad is a busy man, was a busy man. So, but the cool one was late at night on a Saturday night after watching the Leaf game with him, we'd sit and watch, All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver, which is the first time I got to see Jimmy Snuka and stuff like that. But, as a youngster, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood were my favorite tag team. Getting to see, hard to say this, a young Ric Flair, becoming NWA World Heavyweight Champion, getting to see AEW. I was at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto in '79 when Bob Backlund, who was WWF champion, faced AWA champion Nick Bockwinkel to a no contest.
Wow.
I was blessed to get a lot of wrestling on television, and then the freedom to go down and get to watch it live at Maple Leaf Gardens and become like a season ticket holder, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
That's great. Yeah, when I was growing up on Long Island, I had WWF. We had the Superstation, World Championship Wrestling. We get AWA on ESPN. We get World Class on ESPN. Even like the Savoldi IWC stuff used to be on Sports Channel. I remember telling Tommy Dreamer one time, I'm like, that's the first time I saw you when you were TV Madison on IWC on Sports Channel. But that's the thing, like once you get into it, like you seek it out if you're a certain level of fan, and you kind of need to know when to spend. Nowadays I don't have any time to watch most of it.
I hear you. It's tough. I do the reviews on Mondays and Wednesday nights, and also also have joined my good brother in stripes, Brian Hepner, talking wrestling on his podcast as well. It is tough to keep up because there's so much of it now, and there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your beginnings in the business and how you started, and what made you become a referee. I'd love to hear a little bit about the Tunnies. I'd love to hear a little bit about what the ref crew even looked like back then. So,
okay.
How did it start?
Well, it started to be one of my hobbies. Was I like I said earlier, I got the season tickets. I was second row ringside, and Maple Leaf Gardens had that ramp that went from the entryway level with the ring, so the stars were elevated. And what I used to do is take pictures. One of my hobbies was with an actual camera, not a phone back then in the day. And I would come back to the next show. We had a place up here that had a promotion for their film developing, double your prints for $1. So for $1, I'd get a second set of prints, and I'd take them with me to the following show and sell them for $2 a picture to fans. And that's how I was funding my going to wrestling. And then I got caught by someone by the name of Elio Zarlenga, who was the one who took photographs ringside and did the program, Stranglehold program for Maple Leaf Wrestling. And he said, "Hey, buddy, can I see your pictures?" I said, "Sure, here you go." He goes, "How much are they?" I said, "They're $2 each." And he says, "You know what? You can't do that." And I said, "Why? Who are you?" And he told me who he was. He worked for Jack Tunney. And I was like, "Oh." He says, "Do me a favor. Just don't do it right in front of the building where everybody can see you. Kind of do it like off to the side and stuff like that, kind of in the back, wherever behind the building. Just don't be very visible." And then he said, "Let me see if I can get you a job helping me out taking photographs." And I went, "Oh, this is cool." And he introduced me to Jack. And Jack said, "I'll tell you what, we don't need another photographer, but we'll find something for the kid to do." And I became, kind of like the guy they went to. "We need this, we need that. Can you go get this? Here are the keys to my Cadillac. Can you go up to the airport and pick up so and so and stuff like that. So I became a kind of like an all around hand.
Yeah.
And I became friendly with the agents like Jack Lanza, Gerald Briscoe, Pat Patterson was awesome. And Pat just says after about a year or so of doing this, Pat says to Jack Tunney, he says, we got the kid over here. He does all this stuff for us. He hangs around all day waiting for the show to end to do more stuff. He says, why don't we use him during the show? We'll make him a referee. And Jack says to Pat, well, do we want to smarten the kid up? He says, smarten the kid up? He's in the locker room with the boys hanging out. How much more do you want to smarten him up? He says, so he came to me and he said, get yourself black sneakers, black pants, a blue shirt, a black bow tie, carry it with you at all times. We're going to eventually make you a referee.
So was there is there anybody who would like mentor you in terms of being a referee? I know it's kind of like on the job training a lot of times in wrestling, but over the years, was there anybody who kind of took, 'cause I always wonder with that, because a lot of times now referees train in like wrestling schools. So it's wrestlers really training the referees sometimes.
Right.
Who was that for you? Was there anybody that was most helpful to you in your journey?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know enough at the time when I was carrying my stuff around, waiting for the opportunity to referee, to ask questions. It just didn't occur to me. Then one day, Chief Jay Strombo says at a house show, he says, hey, Jimmy, you got your ref gear with you? He said, yes, sir. Yes, Chief, I do. He says, well, put it on your ref tonight. SD Jones versus Jose Luis Rivera. So I said, okay. And I didn't want to tell Chief, yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing yet. You know what I mean? So I went to SD, who I was buddies with, and I said, SD, I'm refereeing your match tonight. He said, oh, that's cool. I said, I've never reffed a match before. He says, stay close to me. I'll talk you through it. And then after the match, he gave me a little bit of critique and stuff like that. And he says, you know what? Go talk to Hebner, David Hebner at the time. Go talk to Timmy White, talk to the other referees who have been doing this, and just get feedback from them. Ask them to watch your matches and stuff like that. So Dave Hebner was a big help. Timmy White was a huge help. Earl, of course. And I just listened and asked them to please watch my match and give me feedback. So those are the main three.
Interesting.
From the start, until I learned enough to ask, hey, guys, you know what I mean? I didn't know enough at first to go say, hey, what do I do?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
kind of on the job training, so to speak.
The role of referee, and I think we've actually talked about this a couple of times online a little bit too, is like it's something that's always interested me to kind of learn why that individual is so important to the whole thing going on. How have you seen it change over the course of time from back when you were breaking in to now, of what's different about what the referee does and what's the most important thing?
It has changed a bit, because the role of the referee is to be visible without being a distraction. Because, as you know, in wrestling, it is the illusion of it being an athletic contest. So the referee is there to enforce rules and help the talent tell their story without being, like I said, a distraction or a part of the story, unless there's a spot that calls for you to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're there to help bring everything together. And unfortunately, today, what I'm noticing a lot, there are a lot of referees out there. I don't want to say a lot, but there are some referees out there who tend to be a distraction and want to be noticed. And it takes away from the match. When I see two faces, like I talked about earlier, when there was that face-to-face at WrestleMania between Rock and Hogan, you want to see those two guys face off. You don't want to see somebody's face in the middle going, oh, look at these two guys. You know what I mean? It takes away from the moment, at least on the screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're watching it at home. So the role of the referee is to help the talent tell their story. And I think a lot of times nowadays you're seeing the referee wanting to be an integral part of the match, as opposed to just saying, hey, you know what? I'm a supporting player and I'm happy being a supporting player, because I was all those years.
Yeah.
It's nice to be recognized. Don't get me wrong. When people see you, hey, aren't you the referee? Blah, blah, blah. That's nice. But at the same time, that wasn't what it was about. It was about, doing it right.
Yeah. Me. And I think one of the problems too is that I think some promotions, and AEW is an obvious one, and
right.
But they're encouraging the referees in ways, kind of marketing the referees a little bit now too, which is a little different than I've seen anybody really do. So, if they're being asked to do that, then they're playing the role that they're supposed to be. If they're not being asked to do it, then they're not.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but it takes away from
yeah,
the match, in my opinion. Like,
it
I
can.
get it. You look at UFC, and everybody knows who Big John McCarthy is, right? Because
Right.
he's big jacked up dude and blah blah blah. But during the fight, you don't sit there and go, oh, look at that, look at John, look at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He stays out of the way until he needs to be in the picture.
It makes sense. Well, what was the best part of being on the road for you? And are you happy that you're not now?
Yes and no. I miss the, like I said, I miss my road family. As much as I rib them, Tony Chimmel was my riding partner for all those years, and Kyoto and Charles and Larry Heck, the trainer, and there are just so many of us that you're basically with them more than you are with your actual family. So, like, that's why I said they become kind of like your road family, and being in the ring with the talent, and I'm not saying that everybody was cool, but for the most part, it was a cool business to be a part of. Yes, TV days were hard and long, but at the same time, I had golfing partners on days off. Guys like JBL and even Cena would get out there. Booker T, of course. And we had fun on the road together.
What's the most unique place the job ever took you?
Oh, I would have to say Iraq, when we did tribute to the troops.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, we were in a battle zone, and we're staying in Saddam's palace, one of Saddam's palaces. That was our accommodations.
There's only a few people that could probably say that.
Yeah, mind you, we all slept on cots,
right?
Just like the troops. But each room, like the talent room and the crew room, had one king size bed in each room. And of course, in the talent room, Taker was the man. Right. So he didn't have to ask for the bed; it was given to him. Right. Do you know what I mean? It was like unanimous. But Big Show was on the trip too. So Big Show strolls into our room and sees we have a king size bed, and the head of our production crew was like a 5'6" young man who commandeered the bed. And Show was going, "Hey guys, how's it going over here?" And notices this and goes, "Oh no, this is not happening." So Big Show slept in our room in the king bed, which is fine. It's cool.
That reminds me of a trip I had to go on in college one time for a meeting I had, and I was in the front seat at first, and the person behind me was the 6'9" member of the basketball team. I'm like, yeah, we're switching places, aren't we? Wow. I'm 5'8", so yeah, that's not happening.
But one of the things that made that trip really intriguing is one of the matches I refereed on that show was Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit. In the middle of the match, they did a flyby with aircraft during the match, but they didn't tell us that it was going to happen because they wanted to get the natural reaction from us, which they got, which was like, what is going on here? Then I heard in my IFB, hey, tell the guys to relax. This was a planned flyby. Don't worry about it. I told them after it happened, but they just wanted to get everybody's natural reaction. What a way to do it, though.
Yeah, especially when you're in a war zone. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest difference for you from when Vince McMahon is in WWE versus when he's not? That's such a big story right now, and you would have a pretty good perspective on what it's like with him around.
It seems like the talent is, and it's not a knock on Vince. Vince just has that aura about him. The talent seems a little more relaxed now. They feel a little more like we can go out there and kind of, I don't want to say go off the rails, but they can go a little off script without having to worry about coming back to Gorilla and getting that look in. Come here, pal. That sort of thing. So I think there's a little bit more creative freedom to be more themselves, which is good. And I think it shows. I think you can tell that the talent, the biggest thing for me is the talent feels a lot more comfortable with Hunter at the helm right now.
Is there any personal experience with Triple H, Paul Levesque, that you could share about kind of the way that he handles things, or any good interactions with him that you've had that would kind of encapsulate him?
No, it's just he was always treated me well, both in the ring and outside the ring. And one of the things that really, he used to call me Korderas instead of Korderas. That was his nickname for me because, the fun thing for me was back when SummerSlam was here in Toronto a few years ago, I was covering it for Sportsnet up here as we were doing our show. So they had the after show presser that Hunter was doing. And I went to the back, you know what I mean? And for the presser, and I raised my hand to ask a question. I wish I could remember what the question was, but right away he goes, oh my goodness, I have to go to Corduroy right there in the back. Hey, Corduroy, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. You ready to put the striped shirt back on? Like he's going through the whole move. And I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I can't think of an interaction that I had with Hunter that was negative ever.
That's really good. And I really just think, with all the transition that's gone on, the stuff about the sale possibly coming up and this and that, I feel like he just hasn't missed a beat. Like I've really enjoyed his vision for the company. And I think it's still also true to the history of the company too. I think he understands it really well.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. And like you said, bringing up the subject of a possible sale, whoever if it is for sale and it gets bought by someone else, by another corporation, you need someone with that wrestling knowledge at the helm. So whoever I was, I would probably work on keeping Hunter in that position because he is that smart.
So you mentioned kind of the media side of things and the hosting and the broadcasting and podcasting and that kind of stuff that you're doing. What do you like the most about getting involved in that stuff?
I get to speak my mind. They're allowing me to be honest, and that's all I'm being is honest. I'm not choosing sides. These guys versus those. This side versus that side. It's not about wrestling politics, so to speak. I'm not putting a sign up on my front lawns. You know what I mean? It's me getting to express my opinion and the stuff that I learned over the years from some great talent. Not just striped shirt talent, but also some wrestlers, learning from them. And I get to express my opinion. And that's exactly what it is my opinion. And it's my honest opinion. And I get the freedom to express positive or not so positive opinions. And I like it. It keeps me interested. It gives me another reason to watch, other than the fact that I probably would be watching anyways.
Right, and you'll get called the WWE shill when you praise them, and you'll get
right.
got AEW one when you praise them, but it's you can never win. It's just honestly, just have fun doing it.
Exactly,
like, enjoy it. It's okay to watch the business with a critical eye and understand what you're looking at, but I just think that people get so wrapped up in sides, and it's like I don't think people realize, and maybe you probably be a good person to ask this, but like I don't think the wrestlers feel like this has like the tribal stuff with the companies. Like a lot of these wrestlers are friends with each other across the two companies.
No, absolutely. And I have friends that are in AEW. There's one person there in particular. I talked about him the other day, RJ City.
Oh yeah,
who's doing some stuff not on television for them, and which I don't understand. It's a crime that he's not on television. He is so entertaining. And you look at a guy like Chris Jericho, who just keeps reinventing and himself, and he gets that audience. That's the unfortunate thing about AEW. Let me put it really quickly here, that they seem to cater to a specific audience as opposed to trying to broaden their horizons. Let's put it that way. And Chris understands that. So to get heat with this audience who would otherwise cheer him, because you hear them when they play his entrance music, he says he's a sports entertainer, which hits them right below the belt. And he knows enough that, hey, I'm going to be a heel. I'm going to use the language. So he gets the heat for that. He understands that stuff instead of saying, oh, look, I'm a heel, but look how cool it is that they're cheering me.
Yeah. So we're going to move to something we call the 3 count now. It's going to be 3 quick questions and your answers. So
hopefully they're quick.
Yeah, there's no rules here.
Okay.
The lights just went out of the room that I'm in. I don't know why. That's good. As long as the internet's still on. When I think of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I either think of Darryl Sittler or Matt Sundin. When you think of the New York Islanders, who do you think of?
Oh my goodness, Mike Bossy.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah, that's easy. My goodness, yeah.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet him both as a child and as an adult, and what a great guy he was, and what a talent.
No, he was incredible.
So, if Jimmy Korderas was a wrestler or a manager, what would his persona be like?
You know what? It would be one that, as a former referee, I would be the one who gets on the referee's case. I'd want to be a heel manager, who constantly complains and whines about the reffing.
Interesting.
And how the referee is biased against his protege, the person he represents.
That was one thing I liked when they did the Dangerous Danny Davis angle, was that he was constantly complaining. And I don't know if you were ever on the receiving end of it, but he was constantly complaining to the officials about how bad their officiating was.
Exactly. Yeah. But having an ex-official as a manager doing that, awesome. I think, anyways, that would be fun.
What would your attire look like?
Oh, you know what? It would. Why not a variation of the ref shirt with the logo on my breast here, but maybe with an X through it.
Okay.
You know, just saying, you know what, these guys need to be better.
I liked it when you were the union, the scab referee, when that angle was going on.
That happened by accident as well. It wasn't planned.
Because you were not around when the angle was going on? Was that what it was?
Yeah, I had just gotten married, and of course I had to get approved to get my 2-week honeymoon. So, you know, I get back from the 2-week honeymoon, and I didn't watch any wrestling because I wanted to stay married during that 2 weeks. So I get back and, hey, Korderas, welcome back, blah, blah, blah. And then I run into Hunter. He says, hey, Jimmy, welcome back. How is it now that you get back and you're out of work? And I said, oh, Hunter, I can't stay out of work. I just got married. I can't afford to go on strike. As a joke, like, ha, 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 ha. And he went, ha, ha, come with me. And I went, what? And he took me to JR. He said, Korderas had this great idea. And I'm like, what? What idea did I have? And then they said, oh, yeah, you can be the only regular referee to cross the picket line, become a scab ref, and we'll work it into the storyline that way. And
that was such a unique crew of the scab refs. That he had Dr. Tom Pritchard, you had Harvey Whippleman, Steve Lombardi, I think, was one of them at one point.
Yep.
I think was Dave Hebner in there too for a minute?
I don't recall Hebner being in there, but Pritchard and Harvey and those guys, yes, I do remember. Yeah,
that's fun. So finally, last question: what's the funniest thing that's ever happened in the ring to you?
Funniest thing? Oh, how could you not with Owen Hart? I still, to this day, do not know how he untied my sneakers. They were in a hole. They were doing something, and he says, check your sneakers. And I look down, and they're untied. I'm like, what? It's just incredible. The other thing, too, speaking of Owen, is we were in Montreal, and Carl LeDuc's nephew was wrestling JBL. He'd only just started, and they wanted him to go over, and he says, so JBL says to him, what is your finish? You know, this was before JBL became the millionaire JBL. He says, what's your finish? He says, I don't have one. He says, oh, we'll just do a small package. And he goes, I don't know how to do that.
Wow.
So, and I'm reffing the match, right? So John says to me, Jimmy, small package me. I said, what? Small package me right here in the locker room? Yeah. So I small package JBL, and he's yelling up at the guy, see how it's done? So they have their match, and it was just not good. And John kind of was a little snug with him, let's put it that way. But the next night we were in Ottawa, so they said, oh, and you work with the LeDuc kid because, you know, we don't want John to beat the kid up anymore. He says, but whatever you do, don't let him run the ropes, because he couldn't run the ropes. He would run to the ropes. He'd slow down, stop, turn, lean, and then run the other way. And it looked horrible. So when they told Owen, don't let him run the ropes, Owen says, okay, gotcha. As soon as they get into the ring, they tie up, and he calls for a crisscross.
Oh, my goodness.
So, oh my goodness, it was just, you had to be there. It was hilarious watching Owen do the slow, exaggerated run across the ring. And oh my goodness. But that's the kind of guy he was, you know?
Yeah, I love hearing stories about him all the time. So where can fans keep up with you? And I know you've got some podcasts and stuff coming up too. So if you want to just run through that.
Okay, obviously on my social media, Twitter at Jimmy Korderas, on Instagram at Real Jimmy Korderas, and all my social media platforms, I do my ref and rants. Like you said, it's only a minute long from Mondays to Wednesdays, and it's just a little critique, like I said, having a little fun, wanting to see the business get better. And also I do podcasts on Mondays and Wednesday nights on Wrestling Inc., usually with Justin LeBar or Triple J, as I like to call it, on Monday nights, and reviewing Raw, and on Wednesday nights with Isa, we do post Dynamite review. And now I'm have joined my good brother in stripes, Brian Hebner, and we talk Reffing It Up on Wednesday mornings.
Very good. And check out the 3 Count, Jimmy's book, if you get a chance. I read it a long time ago. It's right over his shoulder there. So
yeah, I don't have a WrestleMania sign, so I'll point to that.
but it's you at WrestleMania in the main event on the cover, so it works.
Yeah,
so you can
absolutely.
point at it. So Jimmy, I'm so glad we got to do this, and I'd love to do it again sometime. And I really appreciate you joining me today.
No, I appreciate you having me. Thank you, Phil, and take care. And enjoy Mania this year. The roads to WrestleMania this year.
All right. Thank you very much.